All right. I'm going to stop there, and we could do maybe 10 minutes of questions, and then who are the people who had their hands up that didn't get a chance? Maybe we'll go there. Carol, was it? Angie, did you want to ask now, or did I lose that? Yes, you wanted to?
Yes.
Okay, so we go to Carol, Angie, I see Ozzy, and then I see Julius, Eddie, Alicia, Devon, and then we in that order. Remember yourself and try to be brief. People are hungry, and they will stone me and not.
Yes, when you narrated about definitely desiring the woman,
Yes.
it run in my mind. Those women weren't innocent, and it takes me back to Eve in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
She made a choice.
Yeah.
And in the same way, that's how I got the feeling that these women also made a choice.
Yeah.
Because they had the choice whether they wanted to be with them, yes or no. So, it kind of puzzled me. I'm like, maybe if they had made a different choice, not being with these beings, then would have had a different outcome.
Right, so I think choice is always at play in the Bible. I think men are also involved because for the women in that culture to get married, their fathers would have had to give them in marriage to these beings. And so I think the whole society was complicit in this rebellion against God. He says you have things after their kind. He doesn't want certain type of cloth mixed with certain type of cloth. He doesn't want humans to lie with animals. He said that's an abomination. This is the kind of thing that's going on. And these guys say, okay, we're crossing the boundaries. We're doing our own thing. And God knows what he's doing. It leads to terrible results, and the flood flows out of it. Yeah, great comment. Yeah, Ozzy, were you next? Yes, who was next? Go ahead, Angie.
Okay, so when you mentioned the sons of God,
Yes.
so when they came
As humans, looking like humans. Yes.
So in a sense, maybe these women
Looking to receive.
probably didn't realize that these were not real men. And I thought of it, the scripture that talks about how we should be kind to strangers because you don't know if you're entertaining angels. And I want, you mentioned that the Nephilims were before and after, although that's different. But I'm just wondering, is it possible without knowing, just as how you could be entertaining strangers and don't know you're entertaining angels, is it possible, without knowing that you could get involved with someone who is a son of God, an angel, and how could you save yourself from such a situation if they're not recognizable?
Right. Well, I think you're asking questions I can't answer. But there builds a lot of speculation.
Yes.
I think first of all, the text makes clear that the humans were complicit in some way because God judges them. And God is a just judge. He's not going to judge humans if they didn't play a part. So they must have known what they were doing. And so I don't, there's nothing in the text that tells me anywhere in the Bible that this is an ongoing situation or anything like that. But as I said, with many of these things, the less I know about them, the better. Some people are interested and want to go down the rabbit hole. As for me, I get what God give me, and I take that, and I take the lessons, I move forward. There's lots of speculation, lots of Jewish extra-biblical writings on these things. You could read that to your heart's content. I don't think they'll bring a lot of light. So I would say, I can't answer the question. I think the women were responsible, as I think their fathers were too, and God judged them. I stop there, and I take the lesson from it. But I think beyond that, we're into the realm of speculation, is how I wish I had more answers for you than that, but that's all I got. Yeah. All right. Who was next? Eddie? Ozzy was next? Go ahead, please.
Just wanted some confirmation.
Yes.
Because you said the ark. Was that you were saying that the dimensions were too big?
Yeah.
So we shouldn't pay so much attention to it? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying that there has never been built a 450-foot long wooden boat just out of wood. Right? Never been built. God can do anything. I'm not saying, hear me carefully, I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm saying that there are people who have raised this question.
Okay.
There are people who raised the question of, well, we've never seen that. And if you look at the guy who did his thing in Kentucky, he had to use, to hold it together, he had to use steel constructs and frames and power tools and so on. And some people say, well, maybe God, maybe they got a little help from God and so on. I'm saying that what we're trying to make the story do is be a video recording that narrates history, which is not how they told about events. You read Genesis 1 to 11, there's a lot in it that is not narrated the way that we would tell the story. And I'm saying we just have to be sensitive to the fact that it is a different genre from a different culture and read it as an ancient text. And one possibility, therefore, is that we're not supposed to read it as the actual dimensions, but that it is telling us something about the ark, that it is a very large boat. By the way, the size of the ark corresponds quite closely to the dimensions of the boat in the Gilgamesh epic and also in the Atrahasis epic. Yeah.
The reason why I had a concern, because you give the specific type of wood.
Yes.
And also with the temple.
Yes.
You give specific dimensions as well. So
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
God wouldn't a metaphoric
Right.
size.
But of course, the temple is a different time period. The story of the temple is very different than Genesis 1 to 11. So there's and the type of wood, we don't know what it is. Gopher. Some people say it could be referring to reeds, like they have in Egypt. So all I'm saying is we're not intended to read it like we have a CNN version of what happened. I think if we do that, we're going to end up in problems, and we're going to find ourselves trying to defend something that we don't need to defend. God doesn't need us to defend him, by the way. Sometimes we put ourselves in a position where we feel like we have to defend the Bible. If there's things you just got to admit, I don't know the answer to that. And that's okay. Sometimes when we go to the side of trying to defend everything, we get ourselves in a position where we start saying things which to people who are informed makes us now less credible and less believable. I just think we have to be careful about that. I'm not saying that the ark wasn't 450 feet long. I wasn't there. I'm just saying questions have been raised, and it does not have to be read in a way to say that it was 450 feet long. If you feel like, no, I need to hold on to that, that's okay. I'm throwing that in because that's an issue, and maybe I ought not to have, given the limited time that we have this afternoon. All right, who is next? Yes, go ahead, Eddie.
In terms of the flood,
Yes.
the size,
Yes.
whether it's regional,
Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah.
what from your studies of the flood, I mean,
Yeah.
what conclusion have you come to in terms of from your own reading about the size and impact of the flood?
Right. Yeah. So there's a question as to whether the flood was a worldwide flood or a regional one, and I'm not very big on the. I don't know a lot about the sites. I've encountered some things, and the suggestion is that there is not anything yet in the geological record to confirm that there was a worldwide flood. And people get into the whole question of how much water it would be and so on and so forth. So some people say, well, maybe it was a local flood. But I think if you read the text clearly intends for us to read it as a global event. And where I'm at presently is John Walton has a book, The Lost World of the Flood, where he makes the point that the flood is described as a worldwide event for rhetorical effect, but not to suggest that it was definitely a global event. And he makes some good arguments where that is concerned.
Alright, so then mankind only existed in one place in the world. So if the flood was set regional, right? And God wants to wipe out mankind, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then mankind clearly didn't go anywhere except that area, which would be fine for a regional flood.
Yeah.
But is that the case though?
Well, there are all kind of questions about where mankind was. The thought is that humanity originated somewhere in Africa, and spread from there. And we're not told of the flood going anywhere down to Africa if it is a regional flood. So it would have to be global if we're wiping out everybody. And then, of course, we don't know when the people reached Americas. There are all kinds of questions. Yes. Yes, it does. But of course, the Table of Nations doesn't describe everybody. I think what I want to suggest is that we're careful not to try to read the biblical text in a way that does not appreciate its genre and the fact that it is an ancient document. And I think there are a lot of questions that we cannot answer. And I personally am okay with that. I don't have to nail down any of those things, because there's some things that I'm not going to be able to understand. But for many of us, we can want to feel like we've got to have an answer. No, you don't, because God doesn't give you an answer to everything. I think what we've got to focus on is what the big picture is. Now, I do think we can engage with people around some of these questions because it can help them. It's called apologetics. But I think to do that, that requires more work. And, we've got to read widely. So I'm not discouraging anybody from doing that. I'm coming back to, I think it was Lydia who raised, or was it Pat who raised the question of, suppose we don't know all of these things and we can't understand it. Can we get to heaven and be with God? And I think we can. And for you, Eddie, I know this would be the kind of thing that would interest you, which is fine. I'm just saying the answers are not easy.
There is one of the times I have is this. Many years ago, looking at Darwin's theory of evolution and all of these things, I was at a place where I said, well, maybe Darwin's theory was the mode of operandi, right? Because you're presented with, I conclude now, some false scientific evidence, but at the time you didn't realize it was false, right? But you're given some logic and something that appears as evidence. I remember you said that you have to be careful how you argue with well-thinking persons.
Yes, well, not well-thinking.
Well,
people who are, I think I use the word informed.
Informed.
Yes.
All right, informed, right? Now, there is informed based on the study of the text. There is informed in terms of understanding the nature of your world and how things operate. And I guess my fear was because I am trying to adjust my belief system to fit logic, to fit something that will make sense to somebody else I'm having a conversation with who believes in, say, Darwin's theory, right?
Yes.
In a sense, I'm literally be giving up on what the Bible explicitly stated. I make man, not a monkey, right? And it is only after further reading I've abandoned that notion to say that this whole concept of evolution is actually takes more faith to believe it than to accept that God just created us from scratch. But it unfortunately, it is the same science that led me to believe that. It's the same science now that is showing other things that say, well, evolution kind of look like it makes sense to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
So my fear is, yes, it's maybe don't make a difference as to try to understand the Bible as a story. But for many people, their accepting of God isn't going to be based on just a story. They're going to be looking at it as it logically reasoning that this happened, right? And so I guess maybe that's why my interest goes there, because if the flood exists, I go, so is there evidence of it existing, and different stories of the flood from different because for us as Christians, it might be.
I'm sorry to press you, but
Sorry.
yeah.
All right, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, I hear you, Eddie. And that's why I'm saying it's perfectly good and all right for you to pursue this. I'm answering you, but I'm also speaking to everybody else. Because there are people in the room that are thinking, oh, that's going to confuse me. So while I'm speaking to you, I'm saying to the people who feel that way, it's okay. You don't let that bother you. But for someone like you, there's a tremendous list of books that is on that handout I gave you. A great place to start would be John Walton's book, The Lost World of the Flood. And I think you're right. There are people who need to delve into that. So I think you can pursue that. But I'm saying at the end of the day, whether we figure it out or not, we're still good. We can get to heaven on the basic storyline. Do you understand the difference I'm making? Yeah, great. And we can talk some more maybe after the break. I have another thought that I was going to share with you in response to the one of the comments, but I'm sensitive to everybody. Were you last? Very short, and then I'm going to let everybody go. Oh, well. It's an emotional question? Oh, great. Yeah.
So my thing is, God lives outside of time.
Yeah.
Right? He knows, what's going to happen 50 years from now.
Yeah.
God knew what would have happened as it related to sin back then with Noah, the ark, and all of that. And even know what's happening and, babies being tortured, all of these really terrible things. God knows these things. Why does he allow like this creation, recreation? Why not just have just the ultimate? Like we're here then. I mean, Mark hates when I ask these questions. And I don't want to sound like I'm doubting the Bible or have any issues with God. But when I look at what's going on in the world, sometimes I ask the question, if God knows that he has to do these things because of sin. And yes, we have free will. But when he takes us to heaven, it's going to be different, right? Why not just have that difference? No. Why having to go through all of this?
It's because of choice. God wants an actual relationship. He doesn't want robots. He's building something, and he's taking us somewhere, and he can't. I
don't mind being a robot if it means that not going through all of this sin.
You say that now. You say that now. Let's be a robot.
Yeah.
You need to divorce Mark right away. You need to divorce Mark right away. Execute.
But God wouldn't do that because.
Why not?
Because God wouldn't want me to divorce my husband of 20-something years.
You need to sacrifice yourself. You need to sacrifice yourself for the people who are poor in Indonesia.
I would do that.
Yeah, life, like cut off your head or something like that. My point is that God, a part of our being human, one of the greatest gifts that God has given us is free will. My children, I've had a lot of pain with my children. They're great kids. God says of a woman, he's going to increase her pain in childbirth. I don't think it just means when she be born. I mean, children are painful because you go through stuff with them. But I'll tell you this. My relationship with my kids is richer because of what I've been through. The cards my daughter has written me that brings me to tears. Because I've been through points in our journey together where she was just rebelling against me. And I had to be like God and just love her unconditionally. And it's a choice that she makes. Not because it's her getting to the place where she's made certain choices. That's what makes a relationship worth it. That's what God is doing. But he's dealing with all of us. And it's very complex because each one of us is complex and each one of us is rebellious. And so God he could have just washed it, it's done, we'll not do that again. But he's committed to relationship. And you can't have relationship without free will and choice.